Welcome to Connected Conversations. I am Elena Petrova, founder and CEO of Ad Astra Inc. Let's share the inspiring stories, strengthen our bonds, and pave the way for a brighter future, one conversation at a time. Welcome to Connected Conversations with Elena Petrova, the founder and CEO of Ad Astra Inc. Here we have conversations about our communities, community leaders, the challenges we face, and positive impact that we can bring to our communities. Because yet again, the change starts with us, the change starts with our homes and our communities. And today, I want to talk about communication. I want to talk particularly about interpretation. Because in the era of AI, there are several organizations that did incredible research on comparing linguists, particularly interpreters, to AI solutions. I want to say thank you to Slater, Nimzi, Barry Olson, he's been an interpreter for 25 years, incredible interpreter, who himself did research that you can find on YouTube. What I want to say is that all this research has been done on accuracy and speed, comparing human interpreters to AI solutions. What I want to do today is I want to expand this conversation and talk about the profession of interpreters beyond accuracy and beyond speed, because like any profession, interpreters are being trained on so many other aspects, particularly code of ethics, because like any other profession, as doctors, lawyers, teachers, they also have code of ethics that they need to follow. And for that reason, I invited Amparo Villar García. She has been interpreter for multiple years. She interpreted on a community level. She's been medical interpreter, legal. She interpreted as far as on how many levels, state level, even supreme level court interpretation she has done. And she's been working as a trainer, learning and development programs in state of Georgia, state of Maryland, DC. And I'm going to pass the floor to you, Amparo. Please say a couple of words about yourself. And I have to start with this. How many languages do you speak?
So hello everybody, like Elena mentioned, my name is Amparo Villar García. I have now 15 years of interpretation at a state level, national level, and a federal level as well. I interpret for federal courts, and I speak 5 languages. That if we don't count the Guanche dialect that we speak in my island, so 5.5.
So can you tell us what languages you speak?
Oh, Spanish, English, French, Wolof, Guanche dialect, and I can somehow speak Italian. That's what I say, 5.5.
And again, before we even start this conversation, I want to make it very clear that nobody at Ad Astra community is really against AI solutions or any AI advancement or developments. We're 100% on board with that. And we really do believe that AI will help linguists, particularly interpreters, to move forward with our profession. What we do want to highlight is that beyond accuracy and speed, this profession has so many other areas that currently we haven't been talking about, and we think that we need to highlight this in this conversation. And then we really want to emphasize how AI can enhance our profession and make the life of interpreters so much easier and more advanced. So let's talk about let's talk about you. Just tell us what motivates you and how you entered this profession in the first place.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna go down memory lane. 15 years ago, I was working for a company that have a contract for the IRS. I loved my jobs. I hated the hours. And a really good friend of mine, a nurse for a hospital, her name is Tiffany, told me, hey, you speak like 3, 4, 5 languages. She wasn't sure. Why don't you become an interpreter? And I wasn't aware of the profession, the career, and I asked her, well, what do interpreters do? Her view of interpreters was specifically, and we laughed about this in New Year's when we were remembering this, she said to me, well, they are just in the hospital walking up and down. I see them everywhere, and they help us, and they help the people that come to get care from us that do not speak English. But the first thing she said was, they help us, the healthcare workers, when in our community, in the language and communication industry, sometimes we have this idea that the interpreters only help the people that don't speak English. Her idea was that they help the healthcare workers. And I searched it. I actually did my first certificate, and in the middle of tax season, February 10th, I left the IRS. And yeah, it's been the best career change that I could ever done. It has brought me a career, a profession, and a purpose fulfillment. And I'm so happy I did.
And I have to say, you are really incredible interpreter and also a trainer. That's
Thank you.
Changed so many lives that I know of. And Amparo, so let's talk about a little bit. Give us an overview of the current training programs and, more importantly, certifications, because that this profession does require certifications, right?
Yeah. So one thing that I often hear about from people is, what do I need to be to become an interpreter? A lot of people believe that we need to have a strong bachelor's or a strong education on language arts or some sort of matter. And I tell people, you can, and it's fantastic if you do, but you don't have to. I come from economics. People laugh often when I tell them I start mathematics and I switch to economics. I come from the financial world. And I tell you, I'm a numbers person in a linguistic world. And we have so many people that comes to our field that have PhDs. And I say this because we will get into this probably. We have a lot of people that come to this country with very advanced education that is not in linguistic arts or related fields. They come from the healthcare, they come from finances, they come from a lot of fields, and you can always come to the interpretation field because you can do your first certificate and then already put your foot in the door, and while you're in the door, continue your education. And that's one of the best things about this profession. You don't have to dedicate 5, 6, 10 years in order to get your foot in the door. So
and it also helps, right? Because if you are already an expert in medical field, obviously your interpretation in that field is going to be superb, right? And if you are, I don't know, for instance, I cannot interpret in airspace because I do not know anything about airspace. But if my primary education in airspace, that's probably going to be my niche, right?
And there is people that, for example, like I have 2 good friends that came from being clerks. They were court clerks that I used to interpret in those courts, and they end up asking me, how do you become an interpreter? They actually being interpreters now for 8 and 5 years, and they came from the legal setting, and then they became court interpreters first, got their foot in the door, and then now they are community medical interpreters. One of them is a conference interpreter. Then you have people that come from the healthcare. You can come from any field, and almost always there is some setting in the interpretation world. It can be community, it can be education, it can be insurance, it can be business, it can be conferences, it can be agriculture conference, wedding conference, it can be anything that most likely you will have a transferable skill that can make you come into the language industry.
So can you give us nationwide certification? What bodies in US are certifying interpreters on the national level? And then, of course, we have state level as well.
Yes. So you can, if any of you guys want to come to the language industry, or you just want to know about it, or you want to tell somebody about it, you can start at first getting your 40, 55, or 60-hour certificate. I want to make sure that people understand one thing is your first certificate, another thing is your certification. When we say that an interpreter is certified, it means that it's nationally certified, because we often confuse those terms. You can start by getting your minimum 40-hour certificate. That does not mean that you are certified or a certified interpreter, but you can start for having your 40-hour minimum certificate. Come to interpret, you can already start working in the field with certain clients, because it's different requirements. Once you're already working in the field, once you already start getting some experience, if you want to get nationally certified, then you can, and of course, I forgot to say this is something that you need to speak 2 languages and have a fluency test to get your 40-hour certificate. But once you have that 40-hour certificate, you can then escalate and get nationally certified by registering. And what you will have to do is study for the written test and the oral test. Once you pass those 2 oral and written tests, you can obtain your national certification. I usually advise people to come to the field, get experience, because in order to do the oral test, having experience as an interpreter is a big perk, and invest in yourself as you go in the profession.
Can you give us again which bodies certifying? Because we have
where
you can get certification.
Yeah, you can have your certification with CHII, CHII, and you can get your certification with the National Board of Interpreters in Healthcare, which it actually allows you to interpret in community and other settings. And in a core level, you, in order to become certified, if you like core, if you like legal, also, you can get certified at a state level. Each state will certify you as a core interpreter, and then you can get certified at a federal level. In order to interpret for federal core, you have to be federally certified. Those are the main certifications.
Thank you very much. And now what I would like to again say here that what settings interpreters really interpret, right? We have conference interpreters, we have community interpreters, and medical fits into community. Then we have legal. Am I missing anything?
Business.
Well, business, yeah, we can say that it's conference, and business can fall into legal, right? Because
legal.
Yeah,
the main settings, we used to talk about medical and legal, then medical, community, legal. Now legal brings core, because a lot of people like to do legal interpretation. I have friends that have a lot of respect for the core setting, but they do legal depositions in attorney offices, right? So often within that legal is just having to show up in court, which for some people is intimidating. But you can do legal interpretation, going to do depositions for insurance companies, for lawyer offices. So I will say nowadays we say that it's community, medical goes into community, legal, which involves core, and conference, and then conferencing brings business and other settings.
And I want to also bring here the fact that we have different modes of interpretation. Why I am bringing it here, I think it's important to understand, is that, again, when we're comparing humans to AI, we usually compare simultaneous mode of interpretation, how fast, how accurate, what what preferential choices that AI picks versus humans, right? But what humans have to know, right, when to switch from one mode to another. So how many modes do we have, right? Because usually people know about consecutive versus simultaneous, but in reality we have more modes.
We have two more that
right.
are not very talked about.
Right.
We do talk about in the trainings that I conduct. So we have different roles of interpreters and modes of interpretations, right? The role of the interpreters are to be a conduit of communication. I call it ping pong. Ping pong, ping pong. You're interpreting for two people that don't speak the same language. There is no issues. Everything is perfect. Then we have the clarifier role. When the interpreter has to clarify something, they have to intervene. They have to interrupt. Then we have the cultural broker role.
No, well, let's go back to modes, because we were talking about modes,
okay,
right?
Modes.
We have simultaneous, we have consecutive.
So we have, I got into my training mode. And I start from roles and then modes. So we have the role of the interpreter and the modes of interpretation. How do we interpret? Once interpreters know what interpreters do, which is the role of the interpreter, we go into how do we do that, which is the modes of the interpreters. These are consecutive, which means that Lena is speaking, I'm an interpreter, she paused, I interpret. The person over here speak, I interpret it, Lena speak. Basically, we take turns. That's consecutive. We have simultaneous. Simultaneous is when Lena started speaking, and within 2 seconds, 2 to 3 seconds, I start interpreting right behind her. At the same time that she's speaking, I'm interpreting. You have usually a couple of seconds there that is called décalage. And it's very difficult because you don't have time to intervene. You don't have to, you can't interrupt. You have to keep going. We have side translation. Side translation is not very talked about, right?
Well, in medical, we use medical.
It's very used, but often a lot of people don't talk about side translation.
Some people do not even know what side translation mode is. Right?
That is true. So basically, that's when you are asked to read a document in one language, and you are reading the document, but you have to read out loud in a different language, and it takes technique to do that.
Right.
And the last mode of interpretation that right now in the industry is actually being debated if it should be a mode of interpretation or not, is summarization.
Correct.
So we have 4 modes of interpretation, and summarization is on debate now.
Yeah, but it's still there. I see that
there.
It's been used a lot in government settings, particularly in monitoring. And right now, monitoring is quite important for the law enforcement and intelligence, right?
And summarization is really important in war zones, when interpreters interpreting war zones.
And I was going to
summarization
go
is really
with
important
that.
too.
Yeah, because very often, again, when we talk about AI, we're just saying like, okay, well, AI is just going to be set up, and that's just conveying the message, right? But I think that the role of the interpreter is so much more in terms of connecting people together and facilitating that communication. And that I was going to go with the war zone, where again interpreters are so crucial, and particularly for journalists, because again that's very dear to me. I have a lot of friends who in hard disaster zones, war zones, they even call interpreters fixers. Because why they are fixers? Because they literally facilitate communication, then connect communities. Very often communities are not even going to be talking unless interpreter is fixing that communication, helping organizing sometimes the safer routes across the country. That's that's the job of interpreters outside of conveying the message.
Some people
Right?
have gone as far, and I hear often, and I agree, interpreters in war zones, especially journalists, are called peacemakers.
Right. And so let's talk a little bit. That leads me to the role of the interpreter beyond accuracy, beyond the speed of interpretation. What else do we train interpreters when we kind of prepare them for the professional environments? And then again, let's go one by one and not to spend too much time, because for the sake of our time here in the studio, let's just give it like a very brief description. We have legal, right? In the legal settings, when we talk about interpreters going to court, the interpreter needs to know when and how to take the oath, when to switch from simultaneous to consecutive. Can you give us a little bit of and they sometimes they say they even for translators. Today we are not talking about translators, but when translators do the translation, then sometimes have to show up in court to take an oath again. And let's talk about how to take an oath, how to switch from simultaneous to consecutive back and forth. If they are taking notes, how to destroy the notes. Can you give us again very brief?
Yeah, absolutely.
Run.
So, and we'll talk later about, like you say, the AI role that I encourage in all my trainings, to use AI to help you be a more efficient, a more high-level interpreter. We'll get into that later, because AI will help interpreters to achieve that high level a lot quicker. So often people believe, even in our industry, that when it comes to, for example, medical interpretation, you will only use consecutive. That is not true. If you go to a court setting, you will always interpret in simultaneous mode. That is not true. In court settings, like you were saying, you have interpreters that have to interpret consecutively when, for example, the judge or one of the counselors is asking questions to the person that is there in court. For example, for witness, for cross-examination, persuasive language is used, right, in court by lawyers often. Persuasive language has an intonation. It has a spirit, and I always say this in my trainings to wake people up. The message has a spirit, and that spirit cannot simulate by AI, right? So often, the interpreter have to switch from that consecutive mode of interpretation to simultaneous, because now out of the sudden, the witness says something, and the counselor wants to speak to the entire room, and the interpreter has to switch from consecutive to simultaneous and back and forth. And this happens in the medical field as well. You have, and I don't know if I have time to give a quick example, but in the medical field, often you can have a doctor in the room and a nurse comes in to give them some information about the lab, and they start talking to each other, and they don't realize this, and the patient is there, and the interpreter has to go from consecutive, interpreting between the doctor and the patient, and out of the sudden has to jump into simultaneous, because the doctor is having a conversation with somebody else, and the patient has a right to know what is said in the room. So in every setting that I can think of, interpreters have to jump from simultaneous to consecutive, not just in the court setting more, but even in other settings happen often. Mental health, a patient has an emotional breakdown. The interpreter's interpreting consecutive, like I call it ping pong, everything is going fantastic. And now out of the sudden, the patient is triggered. The patient has an emotional or a mental breakdown, and the interpreter has to recognize that emotional breakdown. The patient will not stop talking because they are in a breakdown, and you cannot interrupt in that moment because it has consequences that I can talk here forever about. So to make sure the interpreter has to have that emotional intelligence and that knowledge to jump into simultaneous interpretation. And while that patient is having an emotional breakdown, you still have to interpret everything to the provider. So it's many different settings that the interpreter has to switch between one and another. And I gave too many examples, but...
Yeah, and it's a good example, because what we really need to understand here, that I will bring mental health, because interpreter really need to know, again, when to switch to simultaneous, when to stay in consecutive, what word, sometimes mental health schizophrenia cases, when patient is going to be coming up with the words that do not exist, and the interpreter need to follow that lead and be very precise, because that is going to be part of diagnosis, right?
That's so important. Right?
That is so important, because again, if interpreter misses something, that might be part of misdiagnosed case, and we do not know how it's going to be, where it's going to lead, right? So I do not know how, again, AI would be a good tool for the preparation, for the training, for maybe the case for the terminology, tool for the terminology. But again, I think that that's where human touch has to be a part of the profession, right? So can you give us a little bit, again, like very brief, because I know that usually when you train, it's like 45 hours of training when we talk about the code of ethics, but maybe you can give us like 2 minutes run on the code of ethics right now.
I prepare for this question because code of ethics, just like any other profession, we are a profession, we are a career, we are a very young profession. We have to remember that this year, 2025, it makes 30 years from the first nationally recognized training that it was done in 1995 for
but
interpreters.
I want to say, okay, let's just be very honest with you. Like that is here in the U.S.
In the
though,
U.S.
Because somewhere outside of the U.S. it's like one of the oldest professions, right?
Yeah, in the U.S. And I'm not talking about the profession. I think it's one of the oldest professions,
Correct.
Probably. But it's 30 years since we have a nationally recognized training in the U.S. in 2025. The first one was in 1995. Before, it was a profession that it was not as recognized as it is right now. And I believe that we still have to keep working on the professional part of our profession, not to be redundant. But yes, so our code of ethics, like any other profession, and we keep working on being recognized and recognize the importance of interpreters. We have, like any other profession, 9 code of ethics. Mm-hmm. The beauty of our 9 code of ethics is that they come with 32 standards of practice. So we have 9 code of ethics, and then we have 32 standards of practice. The difference is that our code of ethics are the principles. Our standards of practice are how do you implement those 9 code of ethics. So should I say our 9 code of ethics?
No, I don't.
Okay, I want
to. We will need a separate podcast for that. But I just, for me, it was an important. It was important to bring it to our conversation, because again, I am going to emphasize how important it is. And again, I think that if interpreter makes, and I think Bill Rivers had a very good podcast, I think it was on Slater, when he was saying that if interpreter makes a mistake during the conference, I think, we can move on and make, maybe a mistake is not going to be so impactful, I should say. But if interpreter makes a mistake in court, it's somebody's life. It can be, it is somebody's life, right? I don't know if it's a life or death situation, but it's definitely somebody might be going to prison and might be not, or it may be somebody else's life. Medical diagnosis, people got overdosed because interpretation was done wrongly because of the measurements in different, like even Spanish, right? Puerto Rican Spanish, from what I understand, is very difficult to use Mexican, happened. Right? That happened.
There is geographical variations within the same language that a human will know. AI might not. And we talk about this. If I'm an interpreter and I know you're British, I might say the person has to take the lift to the 5th floor. But if I know that you are American, I might say the person has to take the elevator to the 5th floor, right? That's something that as a human I will know, because I know you, if you're British or if you're American. AI will not know that. So these geographical variations within the language that only humans will be able to recognize right there on the spot.
I think that even right now, so a lot of tech professionals probably will argue with us right now when they say that AI is getting to the point that it's probably getting better at this. But my point here is though that companies that do interpretation and even some of the professionals that work on their own, they take liability insurance, right? And with that liability insurance, usually when hospitals or medical facilities sign the contracts, what is happening at the moment that if there is a mixed diagnosis, and the family is suing the hospital or medical facility, then either interpreters such as you, who might be working on your own as a freelancer, carries liability insurance. Company like me carries liability insurance. We sign the contract, we split the cost. If it is a tech company, there is absolutely no requirement right now to carry that particular liability insurance in the medical field, who is going to be taking care of those cases. So right now it's very unclear.
It's very unclear. There is a lot of uncertainty right now, and that's why it's so important to have these conversations. And everybody's point of view is valuable. I do believe that, I'm pro. Can I say that I'm pro AI, because as a conference interpreter, I have the pleasure of interpreting one time for the United Nations, actually in DC a long time ago. I didn't even know you back then. And I remember preparation, searching, even assimilating all the information that you need is a lot easier right now with AI. You can do it a lot quicker than back when I was preparing for conferences, So again, these conversations are important to have. I do believe that AI can be an incredible tool for interpreters especially in the preparation of interpretation, and they can take interpreters to another level. But I still believe that it will take quite a while for AI, if they ever get there, or it gets there, to do what humans do. Humans have this cultural immersion for many years that AI doesn't have. So that's what I tell interpreters. Use AI is going to be your best friend.
Well, I think that AI could be also a great tool in terms of, I don't know which platform, all interpreters work in different platforms, right? If they are working remotely, whether it's OPI or VRI, there is always a way to integrate AI into, again, we can call them production environment platform, where they can have literally the text running in front of them, where they can use to, again, increase the accuracy, where they can see the terminology, if needed, in whether it's for medical terminology or legal terminology, anything like that. So that's definitely could be very helpful. In addition,
terminology-based search.
Right. That's so many different levels that we can leverage it. Now, in my opinion, human touch will remain to be human touch, because what is that we need our services is, again, facilitate and connect people, and who's going to be doing it better than us?
It won't, and we have to think that when we are interpreting, I tell all my interpreters, your job is to be a conduit, right? A conduit of communication. Communication is an art. Let's start from that. be a conduit of communication between two people that don't speak the same language. Another part of the role of the interpreter is to check for understanding. If I can share a quick experience that I have, I think it was like my second or my third interpretation session a long time ago. I remember interpreting, and the doctor mentioned the lady have to have a HSG test. I didn't know what HSG was. Freaked out. I told the lady in Spanish HSG, which mean nothing at that moment, and I remember the patient reply, and she say, "Huh?" And I didn't know how to interpret, "Huh?" So of course, in that moment, I know that "huh" means I don't understand. So of course, I intervene. The interpreter would like to check for understanding. It's one of the roles of the interpreter. We have to check for understanding. I have another patient once that the nurse was giving discharge instructions, and I remember more than once the healthcare provider giving instructions and asking the patients, do you understand everything? Is everything clear? You know exactly what you have to do? And my patients will say, yeah. I don't know if the camera can zoom in, but she was like, yeah. If it's AI, the lady say, yeah, she understood, yeah. Are you sure? Yeah. Do you guys think that she understood? Do you think she understood? No. That's a facial recognition, something that I knew she didn't understand. So there is human touch, there is voice, tone, there is something that I used to struggle interpreting in cancer units for personal family members' experience that I had. And at one point I felt very emotional about it. And often when you go to interpret, you have to show some sort of compassion in your tone, in your demeanor. You can interpret with a smile, oh, you're diagnosed with whatever, you have to somehow be empathetic. And that's something that only humans can do. That's what
Yeah, because one of the things, of course, you are also being trained that we have to bring the register up and down and emotions up and down. We interpret in the same emotional level.
We don't only have to be linguistically accurate. We have to be tone. We have to be spirit accurate, and that involves the fluency, how quickly somebody's speaking. We have patients that will speak really fast or very slow, or they will go fast and slow. So all that is something that only humans.
And again, if it's medical settings, it's a part of diagnosis sometimes, which cannot be missed. And listen, I think we are coming to the end of this podcast, and probably we are going to be having another conversation. I would love to have you over again, because there is so much that you should be talking about this. Because again, to me, this is something that cannot be overlooked at the moment, because I really like integration of AI into our profession, but I really do not want to miss the human factor of it. Because again, so many things that could be lost in translation, so to speak. We don't want this to be lost in translation. The very last thing that I think we just really need to keep in mind is confidentiality, because we really, when we train our linguists, we specifically spend a lot of time talking about confidentiality, how we take notes, how we destroy notes, that our linguists come home, they're not allowed to speak about the assignments. That it's a very lonely profession. They cannot talk about anything. It's like CIA agent. You come home and you're not allowed to talk about your work. The same as here. Yeah. I remember I was an interpreter back home. I would come home really tired, and my mom was trying to why you're not talking? Why you're so quiet? And well, I had the whole day of conversations, but I don't remember anything. It comes in, comes out, and no talks about it.
Yeah, same used to happen to me, and my son used to ask me, "Whoa, what do you interpret today?" and things like that. And I used to interpret for a trauma, level 1 trauma hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. And I used to tell him, watch the news. Probably some people from the news I interpret for, because I can say anything. Yeah, it's a very lonely profession. I will say, I tell my interpreters right now that come to training, every training session, I tell them, listen, the way I envision the future, since we're wrapping up, is kind of like a hybrid mode. I do believe that AI is going to help a lot in the interpretation refine process very rapidly. I wish I had AI when I have to prepare for interpretation sessions, because it can make it so much better. I tell my interpreters, go to AI, do role play. Tell AI, hey, put me in this situation, give me a role play. Is so much that we can use right now, and a hybrid mode where humans will still bring the human touch, know what we can talk about or not, confidentiality, know how not to be biased, we all are biased, and to be impartial, know how to switch everything that we talked today from interpretation in consecutive to simultaneous, know how to have a sense of those geographical variations, know how, for example, know what an idiom means, and no interpret is raining cats and dogs, like it's actually raining cats and dogs falling from the sky, right? and know the meaning. The hybrid mode between the human interpreters and the AI efficiency, for me, and many experts in the language and communication field right now, is going to be the dream and the future, and I can't wait for it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amparo, and thank you for all of you guys for joining us on this conversation. I would be very curious to see your opinion. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section. Let us know what other stories you would like to hear next. And thank you for joining us on this journey of connected conversations. See you next time. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in into Connected Conversation. We truly value your feedback and would love to hear from you. Please let us know what story you would like to hear next. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Let's keep the conversation going, and let's continue to inspire each other. Let's stay in touch. Thank you.